All right. We're almost at 87, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there
I
something
don't know.
is there something special about
I was
87?
born in 87.
Oh, okay. Well, I was born
uh,
in 85.
oh shit. You missed our
Yeah, I didn't even
our
think of that.
birthdays. Welcome to another episode of the Laser Coma podcast. You're the podcast where two dudes come through classic television with a fine-toothed laser. Uh, I'm one of your hosts, NeoCal.
And I am Forever Siege, Siege of the Night, um, Siege
Count
Eternal, Siege
Count
Eternal.
Siege
There we go.
Siege Eternal. There you go. I'd be uh Count Calcula.
Count
There we go.
Calcula.
Count Calcula and Siege Eternal.
In fact, I'm going to
Here
change my name on the window to Siege Eternal because that sounds cooler than Forever Siege.
and yeah, this is episode 86, folks. The Lasercomb podcast, where we are
Better
reviewing.
86 this podcast, people.
Yeah. Much like the blonde 86's people in this episode, we're covering Forever Night.
He was brought across in 1228. Preyed on humans for their blood. Now he wants to be mortal again. To repay society for his sins. To emerge from his world of darkness. From his endless forever night.
Actually, yeah, that's kind of appropriate. We're covering a show with a plot, an episode of a show with a plot that involves murder
Lots of
for
it.
episode 86.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And well, wouldn't you know it? We're covering Forever Night, which I didn't know existed.
I did.
Siege did.
I remember seeing like commercials. I think they ran reruns of it on Space back in the late 90s, and I remember seeing commercials for it. And I remember seeing it in TV Guide
Ah,
in like the program listings because I always thought the name Forever Night was kind of cool.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, let's see. I'm going to give you some intel on if you're curious about what Forever Night is, folks. It's a Canadian TV series about Nick Knight, aka Nicholas, uh, an 800-year-old vampire working as a police detective in modern day Toronto, Ontario. That's
Oh,
right,
and
Canada.
oh, and boy, howdy, does this show ever let you know that it's set in Toronto? Because every establishing shot, I swear, in this episode either has the CN Tower or Skydome.
You won't forget.
Yeah,
You're in
which
Toronto, folks.
this episode was episode 5, Dance by the Light of the Moon, which originally aired on May 26th of 1992. That's Skydome had only been built a few years prior to this.
Oh, that's right.
I
Yeah.
actually I had to look it up, and Skydome was built in 1989, and it cost in 1989 dollars the city of Toronto nearly $600 million to build, which it probably in like today's money that's like 2 bill.
In today's money, that's chump change for the average billionaire.
So I like to think that they when they shot the show in Toronto, the Toronto like city council was like, damn it, we need as much revenue as we can because we spent all this tax money on
Oh, so
building
you think they
Skydome.
got some funding from the city of Toronto?
No, the city of Toronto would have got funding from the film production, the production crew.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah.
I thought you meant like advertising to bring more people.
Well, and that as well. So the city of Toronto was like, we need as many eyes on Skydome as possible. To make sure it's in every single establishing shot of the town. I don't know. The joke kind of fell apart as it was coming out.
I don't know, people. If you're not Canadian, you have no idea what we're talking about. You probably don't know about Forever Night. But if you, ow, ow. But if you do, see, these are
Well,
sick. But
well, this show is set in Canada, but it's actually an American production. It aired on CBS.
oh yeah, it says right.
And then for seasons one and
Wild.
two, and then season three aired on the USA Network. So it's an American show.
Yeah.
And
It's
indeed, this was
not
a
often that American shows are set in Canada.
yeah,
But
yeah. I think I remember mentioning on the last episode of the podcast that I found that kind of interesting because usually, in fact, this is the only time I can think of an American show that's set in Canada.
I just can only think of this.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And indeed, the this is a Patreon pick from our listener and patron Daniel, and I believe he is from the U. Well, I know he's from the U.S.
Hmm. And I just have to say, Daniel, uh, thank you for choosing Forever Night because let me tell you, I might have a lot of things to say about this, all of them entirely positive. So, surprisingly,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I was texting Siege the entire watch through this, and there's some different beats to hit, but I'll get there when we get there.
So, yeah, to jump into it, I guess the episode opens with a business looking guy going off to like a mysterious like warehouse or something to meet up with a an attractive blonde lady, whom I'm going to refer to as Blondie from here on out.
Yeah, Blondie. Okay, I
And
can't remember her name, Serena or something like that.
oh, it was a simple name, like because they it was like Anne or something. It was Anne. I'm pretty sure it was Anne, but I'm still gonna call her Blondie because I found it. I noticed her name. Like I took note of her name because I found it weird that late in the episode when the police are chasing her down. Spoilers for the end of the episode. They're referring to her by her first name, which I found odd because cops generally wouldn't do that. They would be like Miss Blah Blah.
Right. Huh. Well, Blondie. So so we're watching this. Whoever, Rob D, doing God's work on YouTube. Uh, Not the highest quality
Yeah, but it's
upload,
watchable.
but god damn it, it's watchable. And so hats off to you, because hoisting the Jolly Roger, you'd be downloading this for weeks.
Yeah, I couldn't find this available to watch legally anywhere. So, as a last ditch effort, I'm like, I'm like, if it's not on like a single streaming service everywhere, and I checked on the Just Watch app, which is a
Yeah,
very handy
yeah,
app.
it is.
If anyone listening is not familiar with it, check out Just Watch. You can search for something and it'll tell you what streaming services, if any, it's available on. But Just Watch said it wasn't available on anything, and I'm like, well, if whoever owns the rights to this show doesn't care enough to actually like put it on like even like Tubi or something, then there's a good chance it might be on YouTube. And lo and behold, that's where I found it.
I think somewhere said it was on Roku, and I have a Roku, but I didn't feel like plugging it in and booting it up and updating it and then watching it on the TV in
Mm.
the living room. I was just like, YouTube.
And honestly, like if it is on the Roku channel, the quality is probably the same as this. This is an
Probably
old
just
show.
they probably ripped it from this guy's upload on YouTube.
Probably.
So
So
Blondie, yeah, the gist of this is Blondie's like, oh, do you have it? And she like pulls open her trench coat and she's wearing lingerie or something like that.
yeah,
And it's like, did you steal the thing? And
how
he's
did
like,
how did that make you feel?
and generic white male number one, as
Yeah.
Siege labeled him, generic average looking
Generic white male victim numbers one
male
and two.
victim number one goes, yeah, I stole it. And she never actually kisses anyone. She does this thing where she like almost kisses them. She edges them.
She gets all like steamy, like breathing heavily, like rubbing her face
She's like,
against theirs.
tell me how stealing made you feel. Did it make you hot? Does it feel good to be bad? And right away, Christopher was like, oh yes, the turned on by being evil trope.
Yeah, yeah. Evil woman who gets horny over. Who gets horny by over being evil trope?
Yeah.
Who doesn't love it?
Who doesn't love it? And that's getting this guy up, and he's like, yeah, I'm a bad boy. I stole for you. And then mafia wire around his neck. Oh,
And then we're introduced to generic white male victim number two.
I thought some magic vampire shenanigans were going on. And maybe it's the quality, maybe it's that they are dressed exactly the same or look the same. I think Siege got a laugh out of this. The guy that choked him comes out from around the corner, and I swear to God, it was the same fucking person, like a clone or a doppelganger or like a someone imitating him. And I had to like rewind it and go, oh, this guy has a slightly different tie. His hair's maybe slightly different. Okay, technically it's a different person. So maybe just everyone in the early 90s looked the same. I don't know.
Could be.
And she's like, oh, thanks for killing him. Now nobody will know.
You you did something truly bad. You
Not
killed a
like
man.
him. You killed a man.
How
Not
does
like
that
this
make you
person.
feel?
Does it make you hot? And then they start doing the same thing. And she's like, gotcha. And stabs him with this.
Something I want to point out about that. So when she gets in close and they're about to like start making out, he gestures like back like he's been stabbed in the stomach.
I wonder if that was an editing.
And then we find he falls to the ground and we find out that he has a knife, a very shitty looking knife, by the way. It looks like just a standard like kitchen steak knife that you would
It's
get
the
at like
shittiest looking knife.
the
And I'm like,
dollar
there's
store.
no way that killed somebody. There's no way that killed somebody so quickly.
So this shitty knife is like sticking out of his back, and I'm like, well, there's some either an editing problem or just, you know, like really like 10 out of 10 like physical acting going on there.
He gasps before it shows her taking the knife out.
Yeah, because he like I said, he gestures and like kind of lunges backward.
I
and
assume she grabbed his dick.
in the shot, it looks like she's been like he's been stabbed in the gut, but then when he falls down, we see it sticking out of his back. This is one of the first things that I
Exactly. I was
noticed about this
confused
show.
because I was like, stabbed in the gut? No, sticking out of his back. But then we get the most hype intro to
I like the
anything.
theme song.
I love the theme song and the intro. It's like a man who is thrust into a world of darkness, or something like that. And I'm like, hey, they must have been Vampire the Masquerade fans.
You know, I actually kind of like these like old like 80s and 90s intros where it's like a voiceover will tell you the plot of every episode. Like
So do I, man.
in 1972, an elite special forces unit went to military prison for a crime they didn't commit. 10 years later, they escaped from a maximum security penitentiary and are on the run or something. If if you need to hire someone, or if you need help and you can find them, maybe you can hire the A team.
Forever Night. I mean the A team.
That's a show we should do on this podcast.
Yeah. Kind of amazing we haven't.
Yeah, I had talked about like wanting to end this podcast with episode 100, but I'm starting to have second thoughts about that.
As we're getting nearer to it,
Yeah.
there's actually like a lot of shows that Quantum Leap is
Yeah.
one I wanted to.
Quantum Leap, The Mighty Boosh. I still want to do Big Bad Beetleborgs at some point.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, we technically only talked about that many times, but haven't actually done it.
Yeah.
Or did we? Why does
No.
it seem so familiar?
No, we definitely haven't.
No.
So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe this show won't end with episode 100 after all, and we'll just do like a lighter like release schedule on it or something. I don't know.
We'll see.
We'll see. Anyway. But yeah, hype intro, great theme song.
I want to give props to the supporting actors. What I thought was his partner, but I guess is just like another detective. Like
I think it is his partner, yeah.
Yeah.
What was his name? Skanky?
Yeah, like Skanky.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, couldn't have given him a better name.
Yeah.
I missed that at the beginning, and I thought they were calling the stripper Skanky. Like at some point, and I was like, you can't do that.
The cast is something I really like about this show.
Yeah.
Like
I like their commissioner, and I like his partner.
And the medical examiner, who was played by, what's her name? Just gotta.
Oh yeah.
Well, anyway, she voiced Jean Grey in the 1992 X-Men cartoon, and she voiced Jill Valentine in the original Resident Evil 3.
That's pretty cool.
And I looked her up because I recognized her voice.
Oh.
I was like, I actually recognized her voice
memory.
as being Jean Grey, because I've been watching some of the X-Men cartoon. Well, and we watched it for this podcast not too long ago.
Yeah.
But I've actually gone and watched a bunch more of it.
Nice.
Catherine Disher is her name.
Oh, excuse me. Catherine Disher.
She actually used to be married to to Cedric Smith, who played Professor X in the X-Men cartoon.
Oh.
It's weird that neither of them came back for X-Men 97. Because like some of the cast members did, but a bunch of them are recast. Now Jennifer Hale does the voice of Jean Grey, and someone
Maybe the
else
voice
does.
just changed, or they were in a different field. They weren't voice acting, or who knows.
They're all still active. A bunch of them have died. Like the guy who did the voice of Cyclops died. I think the guy who did the voice of Bishop originally died. But speaking of voice changing, X-Men 97, quick tangent. Really good show. It's kind of, the quality is hit or miss from episode to episode, but when it hits, it really hits. But they got the guy who did the voice of Beast originally back, and holy Christ, does he sound like an 80-year-old man now. It like doesn't. I was surprised that it was the same voice actor, because it sounds nothing like him.
And in that case, it's like, oh, what do? Do you hire the same guy because, nostalgia, or do you hire a voice actor that's doesn't sound 80?
Well, and indeed, they hired the original guy back, but yeah. Anyway, weird that they hired some of the OG cast and not others.
Yeah. But back to Forever Night.
Yes.
One thing the show likes to do is shoot back to 13th century, back when he just started, when he was alive. And this
reminded me of Highlander.
Right? The flashbacks?
Yeah.
Because Highlander's been around for like 800 years or 1,000
400.
years.
400.
Oh, is it only 400? Oh,
I believe so, yeah.
And in this, he's from 13th century, so he's been alive about 800 years. And
sporting a mullet.
They're trying to be period accurate. And everyone knows 1200s were just like the 70s.
Yep.
Yeah. Sporting a mullet. I like, out of all the things they could have done with the flashbacks, They gave him a mullet
Yeah.
instead of like long hair or like hair in like dreads or like tied back or something like that. They gave him a mullet.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've seen old medieval paintings here and there. Um, can't recall anybody with a mullet, but hey, I'm sure
but
they did their research.
but yeah, I mean, hey, I wasn't there, Who could
I wasn't
say?
there, and they were. See, as in the flashbacks. And he was like a lord of a castle or fort or something like that, and it reveals tidbits of his past in these flashbacks in relation to much like the Highlander TV show,
Yeah.
in relation to things that are happening in the episode.
Totally. And much like in Highlander, a lot of the time, well, in Highlander, like a lot of the time, the flashbacks to like however many hundred years ago usually involved the Duncan MacLeod like pining over some woman that he loved who is now dead,
Yeah.
and that's kind of sort of what's going on here.
Hmm. And or a lady that tricked him,
A lady
as we'll
that
find out,
a lady that tricked him. Yes, yes,
that
we'll
just
find it.
used him for his fleshy human body.
Yeah, she
And
seems seems to be like some cut. We find out at the very end she's some kind of like minion of sorts for uh basically Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which if you're watching
oh,
the
in the
video version.
flashbacks, yeah.
Yeah.
And so medical, like autopsy medical
Medical
police
examiner.
lady, medical examiner lady, they're dating, I believe, forever night and
I wasn't
medical.
sure about that because she
I
got really jealous about the stripper, about Blondie.
Because they're dating.
So but after the sick intro, we're introduced to Sam Knight. That's his name, right? Sam.
It is now Mr. Knight, Detective Knight.
Nick Knight. That's it.
Yeah, because the vampires call him Nicola.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. So Nick
Nicholas,
Knight,
or
we're
yeah.
introduced to Nick Knight, his partner, and the commissioner, and we find out that the other guy, the guy who got stabbed in his abdomen or back, was a cop who was friends with their like not commissioner, but like their like sergeant or something,
Yeah, yeah.
head of the captain. There we go.
There we go.
We got there.
And they're like, all right, something sussy. You got to look into this. And when they talk to medical examiner lady, she's like, there's something about this you might want to check out. And they're like, what? And they're like, she uses particularly exotic lipstick.
Yeah, they're like, okay, so we found traces of the same lipstick on the lips of both of the men, both of the
Oh
victims.
my.
And immediately my first thought is like, ooh, were they making out?
And they killed each other,
And they killed each other.
right? No, it has to be a bra. It has to be a dame.
Yeah, this is 1992, damn it.
This is 1992, damn it. One thing when they're in the strip club, yeah, there's a strip club in this episode, folks. His partner, Skanky, is like, oh man, do they have any idea about the power that they hold over us men? Yes, dude, that is why they're working there.
Yeah, the Skanky when they're at the strip club, Skanky goes on a bit of a misogynistic rant, and I'm like, oh, is this going to be like, is this setting the tone for, is this going to be like a regular thing in the episode? But Nick Knight actually takes him to task for it.
I was pleasant. I thought it was going to be two old boomers shooting the shit about these broads,
Yeah.
right? But no, he's all like, no, I think it's has to do with power, right? Like men seek power of all kinds, and he's like, oh, so they can get women, and he's like, sometimes they use it for women, sometimes they for other reasons,
Yeah.
right? And you know what? That is good if you draw attention to like toxic mentalities like that, um right, like on your show, but then you have somebody be like, hey dude, actually, and like correct them on it. I think that's better than just ignoring that that doesn't exist.
Yeah,
So
totally.
like kudos for 1992 Nick Knight.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, because it's all you can ignore friends like being shitty, but friends don't let their friends be shitty. And he's like, hey man, I thought better of you. Now let me go get that lap dance.
There's some you pointed this out to me on Discord that there's some amusing editing going on when they get to the strip club because Nick Knight goes backstage to talk to Blondie, and like he's holding his the way it's shot is he's holding his badge up in like the foreground of the picture, and it's just large enough to block the fact that she's naked.
So she's coming in from side camera, and they must have shot this multiple times to get the camera right because presumably she's bottomless. She's wearing like hosiery, but she's bottomless and topless. And just as he's lifting up his badge in the foreground,
Yeah,
it would be when her butt is visible. And then as he holds it up higher, she turns around and he's
yeah.
showing his ID. And I'm like, this director is an artist, an artiste. He was like, cut, we need to time it again. We can see your butt. Okay. Like oh man, what a,
Well, I mean, and
we need to get the CN tower in this in the shot.
well, yeah, and like at this time too, like not a lot of like this wasn't the era of like nowadays like cable TV and like streaming services like having shows that just have like nudity and whatnot in them willy-nilly. This is like network TV in 1992. They had to get creative when they were doing a sexy TV show.
God damn it. And boy, did they. There's something about him interrogating like the manager, which I guess is important because the manager shows up as Blondie's like last lackey
Right.
later. Could have just been any random dude, but it was him. And
Oh, I didn't even put that together that was
yeah,
him. I
yeah.
thought that was just another random dude.
So I was first exposed to the trope of the bright light behind the translucent room divider. That trope of like a woman that's like changing or showing her silhouette um behind like a room divider or
Yeah.
like a Japanese like wall divider, right? I was introduced to that trope through Austin Powers when he did that stupid shadow gag, right?
Right.
And they use this to like tricks to be sexy on camera as she's getting changed out of her stripper stuff into her like her civvies.
Yeah.
um and like quite the succubus she is, she's like, oh, and it's showing her silhouette as she's changing. She's like, can you pass me my jeans? And he's backward sitting on a chair in her changing room, as cool dudes are wont to
The
do,
Riker maneuver.
the Riker maneuver. And he starts inspecting her lipstick, and he's purposely getting it under his nails so that he can bring it to medical examiner lady and they can see if it's a match.
Which I
Eh?
mean, that's not actually what medical examiners do, but
She is police does all the science lady. It's
yeah.
not, no, that's
No.
forensics.
Yeah, that's
um
forensics.
and but god damn it, he's smooth as he's like flirting with her trying to get information, and she's pretty forthright. She's like, oh, the two guys, well, this guy was a regular, but this other guy, yeah, he was a cop. Oh, can you pass me my shirt? But like the shirt he passes her is like closer to her, like she could have reached over and like grabbed it.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, no problem. um Passes her it to it, and then she eventually gets dressed, and she's like, oh, he's like, I'll keep in touch if I have any more questions, as he's leaving. And she's like, oh, I know we're going to see each other again. Now maybe maybe I'm a man of modern times and the early 90s were different. I don't really think she's that seductive or hot.
I mean, I do, but
I don't find I don't know. Like her, nothing about her voice or her face like says like devious seduction lady, succubus woman.
I
But
don't I don't think she would necessarily be able to, like seduce me into like stealing a notebook or like, you know, chicken wire, like strangling someone, but
he died way too fast.
they both
Person doesn't
died.
die in like 5 seconds.
They both died way too fast.
Oh yeah, getting stabbed. He died in like seconds.
Yeah,
And I'm like, I've never been garroted, but I'm pretty sure I could fight back for more than a couple seconds.
right.
Um, but anyway, there's something going on here. Now, at first, I thought maybe she might be a vampire because she seems to exhibit, indeed, like paranormal levels of like dominating with her voice and flirting, like getting men to do what she wants
Right.
on like to dangerous like levels. And it seems to, I'm jumping ahead, but it seems to even affect Nicholas Knight.
Yeah, and that's actually one of my complaints with the episode is I thought that that was going to go somewhere, that she was going to turn out to be like a demon or like a succubus or
Like
something like that.
and that maybe not necessarily change form, but reveal, like maybe contacts and horns or sharp teeth, that she's either another vampire, because if you're a vampire and you have to work at nights, a detective and a stripper are kind of good jobs.
Well, and traditionally vampires have, even going back as far as Dracula, vampires have the like a supernatural ability to charm humans.
And and that is why I thought she was like the more she flirts and talks with you, the more she like gains dominance
Yeah.
over you. Yeah.
But the show doesn't do anything with it.
But she okay, so she definitely does have some like supernatural. It's not just that she's hot. It can't
Yeah.
be. Because like no matter how hot you are, like lady, you're not tricking me, an accountant, into like killing a dude.
Yeah.
like, like they say don't stick your dick in crazy, but have you seen the way this lady like almost kisses you?
And so so after he's done talking to her is when we get the scene with him and his partner where he like takes his partner to task for like being like, he doesn't phrase it this way, but he takes him, as we talked about, he takes him to task for being like a bit misogynistic. And they decide to leave, and he takes the sample back to medical examiner lady, and it turns out like it's a match.
Well, not the thing is, it uses the same wax and base, but this one's from Japan, not Thailand.
Oh, okay.
So they can't, it's not evidence that it's going against her, but it's evidence of somebody that enjoys exotic perfumes and exotic
Yeah.
like makeups and
Yeah. And we've established that that she knows both of the victims. So there's I'm no
I ain't
practicer of
no
law,
fancy city lawyer.
but I would say that's enough for at least a search warrant.
Oh, well, indeed, his partner, when Nick starts acting douchey, which is very sudden and weird, by the way. But
Okay,
we'll get there.
so Nick decides to go to Blondie's apartment, and we find out here that he can fly.
I, yeah. So he looks up because he's following her.
Yeah.
And it's only creepy to follow people if, unless you're Batman, a vampire, or Nick Knight.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're being creepy. And he can fucking fly.
Yeah, he looks up and flies up to her balcony and enters her apartment. And I'm like, All right, well, totally fair, valid, and ethical and legal police work going on here.
And he violates a rule of being a vampire because when she comes in, he's standing inside her place next to the open window, trench coat and all. And I'm like, hey, you need to be invited in. Even Buffy followed those rules. But I guess that doesn't apply in this world.
I guess not. But also, like, he's going there as a cop, and yeah, he just
Yeah, he's not wearing
he just breaks in.
And you know what? She gets in and she's like, oh, geez. Haha, there. How did you get up here?
Well,
She's not
and then she's just
she's not
like,
thrown off at all.
I can respect a man who like goes
Who
for
break and
what
enters.
who goes for what he wants, or something like
As
cheesy like that.
as a sexy woman who gets horny
Over
about
evil.
as a sexy woman who gets horny over evil, there's nothing that turns me on more than someone who goes for what they want. Go gets what they want, as precious is. Uh,
There's nothing that gets me going more than breaking and entering.
than B&E. But like I love like for instance, the curtains are like blowing in the wind and his trench coat is very obvious to the viewer that he just fucking flew in there. Great editing tricks, by the way.
Yeah,
How it just shows like his feet like leaving the ground
they
and then he's just
definitely
up there.
they did it. They did it on the cheap.
That's more endearing to me. But like she's not thrown off by that at all.
Well, and she makes the
That's why I thought it would be revealed that she's a vampire.
well, she
She's like,
makes the comment. She's like, oh, I didn't know the like emergency like stairwell was open or something like that.
the emergency lift went to this floor.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like,
So she just
okay, so
assumes.
she knows he's a vampire. Nope. And I thought it would be revealed that because she's like, give in to your dark desires. And she's like rubbing her pheromones, like succubus pheromones on him and like teasing him and like stroking his like neck and trying to get him to come to the dark side. And he's
Well,
like, you wouldn't want to see the dark side of me. And there's like flashbacks to him
well,
in the dark ages.
we also find out a little bit more about her because he's like, now listen here, toots.
You can't afford a loft like this on a salary of a stripper.
I like that you knew where I was going with that.
That's what you're gonna mention, right? He's like,
Yeah, yeah.
lady, you have like a wild fucking like
Yeah.
you can't afford this. And she's like, oh, I don't rent. I
And-
own this. And he's like,
And he's
even
like,
more sussy.
well, and he's like, no, and she's like, well, no, I don't afford it by being a stripper. And he's like, well, what about an accountant, huh?
Ah. And
I
she's
got you
like,
now. I got you in my crosshairs now, honey.
give it up. You take men for all their money, don't you, sweetheart? And she's like, actually, no. Practicing law for 10 years got me this condo. And he's like, what?
Really? Really? Who's practicing law around here? She's like, I am.
I am. And then she rips her stripper clothes off and she has a full suit underneath her lingerie. And the Law and Order intro starts. And he's like,
And she's got like
wait,
a name tag on her suit jacket that just says lawyer on it.
this is lawyer. Jean Grey, lawyer.
Oh, and then he's like, now listen here, see? I've got you dead to rights. I know it was you. I know you. Two men
Lipstick all matches up, see?
Two men dead in the same room, together, both had your exotic lipstick on them. No link between them besides you, see? It had to be you. I've got you dead to rights, see?
I've got you dead to rights. Play it again, Sam. And and she's like, well, actually, if I did do this, geez, and if I hadn't been practicing law, for a decade, I would, I'd actually think that you don't have anything on me. And she's very clearly wording her admitting to it, but if she's being recorded, wording it in such a way where she knows there's nothing on her.
Yeah.
She's like, you don't have like a warrant. You like came in here on your own. No, I think that you want to be a bad boy. And I'm like, oh, for fuck's sakes. And it seems that her wiles are getting to him.
And he's like, "You don't make me angry, damn it!
You
You
wouldn't like to see
like
the
me,
dark side of me.
wouldn't like me when I'm angry." Ah!
Uh,
And see, I
we're
thought
not even really exaggerating.
and see, I thought what was going to happen here was when she's like, "Yes, I want to see all of the darkness within you." No, you don't. Yes, I do. Let it out. I thought he was just.
Fine.
I thought
And
he
then
was.
his eyes would glow and he'd try to bite her. And then her eyes would glow and it would reveal that they're both vampires, right? Is
Yeah,
that what you thought?
that's exactly where I thought this was going. No,
Me
it
too,
doesn't.
man.
It doesn't go there.
No, she's like, steal your boss's uh, dossier or something like that.
It was the dossier that belonged to the accountant.
Because
He was
Skanky
embezzling.
has been up to investigating the cop that she killed, right? And actually, he's turned up that he was a little dirty. He's a little dirty, this copper.
Yeah, and the accountant guy was embezzling money.
Hmm.
So they're both up to no good.
Always starting trouble in the neighborhood. And well, wouldn't you know it? She convinces Nick to be bad and get the dossier from the accountant.
And so Nick leaves and goes back to the precinct, and I was confused by this because Skanky just knows that he spent the night there and
And
boned
he
Blondie.
immediately is pissed.
Yeah, and I'm like, is
Why is
there
he
a
treating him
scene?
like a
I was like, is there a scene that was cut? Because how does Skanky just know that he was there
so at the beginning I
or
was
that
kind
he
of
spent the night
spacing
there?
at the beginning I was bored and spacing in and out. But then when I realized that, by the way, I love the back and forths between him and his partner.
Yeah,
Remember when he's like got his like feet up and he's like, "Oh man, maybe I will go for some of that red wine you keep in the fridge." And he puts his foot up and he's like, "I'm all out." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, I need some sleep. I don't know how you keep doing these nights, man. I'm useless if I don't have a full 8 hours. At least
and
open the blinds and let some light in sometimes."
and he says something like sarcastic, like, "Well, that explains a lot," or
Oh,
something like that. Yeah.
and he's like, "I'm all out." Oh, that explains a lot.
No, no, no. When Skanky was like, "Oh, I need a full 8 hours sleep," or like, I'm just dead to the world," or something, or "I'm no
Yeah.
good without a full 8 hours sleep," and I think Nick
He
says,
knocks on his head
Nick
behind him
Nick
because he's beginning to fall asleep.
and Nick is like, "Well, that explains some things."
And you know what? The chemistry between those two is like 50% of my enjoyment in this. They
Totally.
really
Yep.
have good back and forths,
I was there's a lot of like corniness to this show, and
which I think I appreciate.
the plot itself isn't the greatest, but I
No.
really like the characters and the actors and the chemistry between them.
Yeah. And they're selling it for me. At the beginning, I was like, oh boy, here we go. Like cop show with like a twist or whatever. But like the mundane like just the normal dialogue between him and his partner is great.
Yeah.
And well, his partner goes to, like you had said, there must be a scene missing,
There
right?
has to be.
Because Skanky is immediately on the offense. And it's like, oh yeah, he needs some information to follow up, eh? Even though I've been trying to get a hold of him for the last day or so, but it's like, well, he's a vampire. He's not awake during the day.
Well, and he know it's stated through dialogue
That
that
he
Nick
knows he went to her apartment.
and that he spent the night there.
Oh, he spent,
Yeah.
or
No,
did he
it's
fuck
meant
her? Did he stay there?
it's yeah,
I thought
it's
he
mentioned
left.
in dialogue that that he stayed the night there.
Because both, I think there's a scene missing in the
There
editing
there has to be,
floor.
yeah.
Because not only is Skanky like really aggressive with Nick, Jean Grey, medical practitioner, is like pissed at him too.
Yeah, for spending. Yeah, she's also pissed off at him for spending the night at the stripper's house.
And she's all like, "Oh, so like you have enough to like bust her or whatever with your new friend?" And he's like, "She's a suspect, okay?" And he's just
What's it to
another
you,
reason.
bitch?
What's it to you, bitch? I told you I ain't in for anything serious. See, you're just a side, honey. See, uh,
I don't remember ever committing to monogamy, tuts.
what is this? The 1950s and 30s even. And so him suddenly flipping a switch and being a dick, and everyone acting like they already knew what he was up to when he didn't tell anybody. There might be like a 2-minute scene missing where someone found out where he was or
Yeah,
whatever. But I don't, it's just a small thing. It doesn't take it away too much, but it is jarring because
it's very
suddenly
jarring.
it is jarring because suddenly it doesn't take anything from the episode away for me, but it is jarring because suddenly he's a dick to everyone and everyone's a dick to him.
Yeah.
And where are we? He goes back to her place at some point.
He gets.
Oh, he
Uh,
steals the
he steals.
dossier
He
by
steals the
tricking
dossier.
the captain into being like, "Hey, I need to look up some things for this, like for a lead that's connected to her." And he's like, for some reason, the captain's like, "Oh yeah, here are my home keys. It's in the front closet, like next to the accordion and like my trophy or like whatever."
It's like in the top drawer of my dresser, like underneath a statue with an accordion on it, is what he says.
Yeah,
And
and
he gives him his house key because
I like that Skanky is like, "Wait, an accordion trophy?" And he's like, "Yeah, I used to play and I competed and I won the
the 89
1880."
the 89 championship or something.
And he's like, "Huh." I liked that back and forth. It was stressful for me for those two to be aggressively at each other's throat. Skanky even like pushes the door in front of Nick.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, I'm glad that he's not afraid of him because he's a creature of the night."
Well,
Um,
I don't think he knows that though.
oh no, absolutely not.
Hence
Um,
the all the red wine in the fridge comment that he makes. Yeah, quote unquote
yeah,
red wine. It's
yeah,
like,
and
yeah,
that's
I
good
see.
storytelling because we just watched this episode, but it's implied at some point he opened his fridge and there were just bottles of blood in there
Yeah.
and nothing else. I'm curious how he gets his blood.
Maybe the
Probably ethically.
maybe the medical examiner. Maybe she, I don't know for sure, but maybe she knows what he is and helps him out.
Intriguing.
That would be a hell of a reason to date a medical professional.
Yeah. Life Labs. Date, date
Yeah.
someone at Life Labs. And we're just taking a second vial here for reasons. So Nick goes back to the apartment and they face fuck each other and rub the hands all over each other. And she's like, "You have the dossier?" And he's like, "Right here." And I'm like, "No, Nick, you fell for the trap of the succubus." And she grabs the dossier and tosses it in her fireplace,
He's like, why
which
are you
is,
doing that? And she's like, I never wanted it anyway.
"I just wanted to see if you had what it takes.
Yeah.
Now tell me about how it felt to steal. Do you feel like a bad boy?" And he's like, "Yeah, mommy, I'm a bad boy."
I'm so
And
bad.
I'm like, "Whoo, things are steaming up here." And he's like, "Now tell me about the bad things you did up close into my collar. Go on, say it out loud." And she's like, "Yeah, I killed that guy and I tricked the other guy." And he's like, "Yeah, yes." With what? With what kind of blade exactly? At what time
The,
of night?
that
Come
doesn't
on,
happen.
give me the
That doesn't happen yet. They
no
the
shit.
the wire that he's wearing happens later when they go to confront her at the warehouse.
Right, because they butt heads. He
So
makes
he
out with her and then they go to confront her and it seems like he's setting up his partner.
so he goes back to the precinct and
You're right.
apologizes to Skanky, and he's like, "Hey,
Oh,
I was out."
creepy. super friendly.
Yeah, he was like, I was out of line there, man. I'm sorry. Like, bros, we bros, fist bump, up
Fist
high,
bump.
fist
Yeah,
bump.
up high, down low. Oh, too slow. And
And
he's
he's
like, yeah, you're in a good mood. Someone must have got the Gluck 9000. And
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 Skanky's
he's like,
like,
let's
well,
go bust this lady, but we're going to do it in an abandoned warehouse. No,
that's what I didn't under. There's no explanation for the abandoned warehouse.
we're going to bust this lady in an abandoned warehouse away from without any backup.
He's like,
Just
come.
you and I.
He's like, come on, homie. Let's go get her.
Let's go get her. I tricked her and she's waiting there for us right now. Don't want to keep a lady waiting. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this guy's got to be onto you.
Oh, don't
There's
want to
some
leave her waiting. Or women, I'd never hear the end of it.
never hear. Who understands women? They want to meet in a warehouse in the middle of the night. They say jump, you say how high, my lady. Um, and so right away you're like, okay, something's weird.
Yeah, so they go to the and it's not implied, it's not explained at all prior to this that they're going to be meeting her for some reason in an abandoned warehouse.
Oh, another reason why there's like maybe a second scene or some more implication of the first scene of a
Yeah.
sting, because they're just meeting her in a dark abandoned warehouse that looks suspiciously like the one the last that a white male victim number 1 and 2
Right. So
were
when
in.
they're like, okay, let's go get her. Don't want to keep her waiting. I'm like, okay, well, he just came from her apartment, so I assume that's where we're going back to. But no, and then imagine my surprise when all of a sudden they just drive up to an abandoned warehouse. I'm like,
I was actually
what?
laughing when they were driving up to the dark abandoned warehouse, and I'm like, Skanky isn't sussy of this.
Yeah.
And I thought there would be I thought she was a succubus or a vampire up to this point, right? So I thought there would be that trope, which we love here on the Laser Comb podcast, where he's like, must resist.
Come on, Nick, fight it. You can do
Mental
it.
dominance. No, I won't kill my ally. Ah.
I don't know how much longer I can hold her. Skanky,
Hold her.
get out of here.
Get
No.
out of here. Ah. And then he just fucks her in the warehouse. But no, we did not see that
wipes
trope.
his head and he's like, whew, glad that worked.
Right? Or then Skank shoots her, and when she's in succubus form, and then she dies and, like bursts into a pile of flames, and he's like, oh, you saved me. But this isn't World of Darkness where they're running into paranormal things. Apparently she's just a chick.
So they go into the abandoned warehouse and she's there. Or they go into the abandoned warehouse. They split up. Nick hides, and Skanky goes to meet her. And Skanky had mentioned earlier in the episode
At the strip club.
at the strip club that he really had a thing for a girl in junior high who wore like knee-high
socks
and like a plaid skirt. And like he's like, anytime I see that, I melt in a lady's hands.
Wing, hubba hubba.
So Nick goes to confront Blondie, and Blondie opens her coat up, and she's dressed like that, and she's like, "Do you like it, big boy?"
She's wearing knee-high socks, heels, and like a plaid skirt, and he's like, nyah, nyah, nyah. And he's all like,
Pretty much, auga, auga.
Awooga.
He's like fumbling over his words, like trying to be like, "You're under arrest."
You're under arrest, lady. And she does her like rubbing her face against him, and she's all like, oh, come on, you don't want to bring me in. Think of the wild, dangerous, bad girl and bad boy sex we could have.
Yeah.
And then, what do you know it? A garrote from behind. Because, every a vampire detective has a garrote at home. A cheese slicer, perhaps.
He falls down dead, quote unquote dead, like immediately. which I found funny.
Like before, I'm like, do people die that fast from getting choked? But she seems to buy it, and they start to make out. And
Yeah,
you're
and
right, I had jumped ahead of myself. This is the part where he's like, "Yeah, I like killing. I'm a bad cop," and she's like, "Oh, you being a bad cop is so hot." And he's like, "Tell me about how you were bad."
and
In,
she's
into
like,
my
if
collar.
she's like, it feels good to kill, doesn't it? And he's like, yeah, it does. He's like, but how would you know? And she's like, because I've killed too. And he's like, who did you kill? Tell me about it. Tell me. And he gets all closer to her. And she's like, oh, I killed both that other cop and that accountant guy, and it was great. And
He's
he's
like, "Yeah,
all
did it turn you on? Did it turn you on to kill them at 42nd Street in the abandoned warehouse at 8 p.m.
yeah.
on on March 3rd?"
And she's like, yeah, I did it. And I did it. See, I did it, and I'm glad. And he's all jumps back and is all like, ha ha.
"You're busted, lady," and like
And
reveals the wire.
reveals the microphone wire um, underneath his collar, and she's like, asshole. And then like another guy shows up who you
A
said
shadowy
was
figure.
the
Yeah,
manager.
she's always got a backup plan.
You said it was the manager from the strip club.
It
from
is,
earlier.
yeah.
Yeah. I didn't recognize
Because he has no
him at all.
lines. She's just like, "Oh, kill him already," and bam,
I thought it
shoots
was
him.
just another random like guy that she was working on.
Shoots him, and then they run off, and Skanky kind of like stops playing dead and is like, you okay, Nick? And he's like, "Oh." You okay, Nick? And he's like, "Oh yeah, he shot and missed, but I just slipped and like fell down. Come on, let's go after them." And I'm like not like, "Oh, don't worry, I'm wearing body armor," or anything like that. It's, "Oh, I happened to slip on a bar of soap at the same time he was gonna shoot me and he missed."
Yeah.
But who's his partner to question things? And he's like, "Oh man, I'm gonna have to wear turtlenecks for a week. Come on,
Who
let's go after them."
who knew there was just going to be a banana peel right there?
Who would have thought? Oh gosh darn it. As he turns to the camera and goes and winks. So they go into this hallway, beautifully lit fog machine. I love this thing. And there's a shootout between Skanky and the her most recent boy toy, the guy, the manager of the strip club, and they're shooting at each other from behind cover. They're holding, they press square to take cover behind waist high walls and pop up, taking turns shooting at each other. But she's retreating out onto the roof, and I'm like, it's cool cinematically, but you never get away from the cops by going onto the roof of anywhere.
And
Let's be
usually when a
real.
character does that, it usually in movies and TV, it usually ends the way that it does in this episode. It's a trope.
So wouldn't you know it, even though she's got this huge head start and she knows how to run in heels, he ascends. And as she's running, leaping from rooftop to rooftop, like the Tick or Cyber Six or some other rooftop
Eric
superhero.
Draven.
Eric Draven. Um, he shows up out of nowhere, out of the darkness, blocking her way.
Corners her at the edge of the roof, and he's like, listen
It's
here,
the end
honey.
of the line here, honey.
Now
You're
just
dead
tell
to
me,
rights.
just tell me one thing. Why'd you do it? And she's like, because I got so tired of the mundane, and I just love excitement. It just turns me on so much.
You see, I'm a sexy woman who gets horny about evil.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
And she's like, and now I know.
I know what
it
it's
feel-
like to kill a man, but I don't know what it's like to die.
And so she jumps off the roof and falls.
And she screams, and I'm like, well, why are you screaming? Why are you screaming?
And so she falls.
She screams and she falls, doesn't die immediately.
So that was another thing I wanted to point out. So she falls, hits the ground, and thuds. They go back. He goes to the ground to see her, and she.
Oh, by now his partner has shot and presumably killed, or at least disabled
the other guy. Yeah.
the other guy. Yeah.
And so she looks perfectly
Oh, she looks fine. They didn't even put fake blood on her mouth. Or
And I'm
anything.
like, I'm like, okay, so that was a pretty big fall that she took. Her skull probably would have cracked open on impact.
Unless she
She
like fell on her legs and either way, your head's bouncing off the pavement.
Either way, she'd be dead. But she's just all like,
She
oh,
looks perfectly fine. She's like, oh,
dying. It feels wonderful.
it hurts so good. And it was like, man, somebody tell this lady she should have found like BDSM at some point.
I was
She
gonna
could have
say
lived
that
a happy life without killing people. If
I was
she
gonna, I was gonna say this lady needs a hobby.
right, like join a club, but hey, this is before Fet Life, before like fetish like clubs or whatever. All she had is her romance novels with shirtless Fabio on the front, and you know what? It wasn't cutting it.
Yeah, she'd read
Yeah,
so many of them that it just wasn't enough anymore.
wasn't enough anymore. Wasn't even enough to just kill people. She needed to get off on making men kill people.
Yeah.
And now and as she's fading, she's like, "Oh, I've never come so hard." And she nuts right when she's dying.
Perfectly timed.
Perfectly timed. Somebody should have introduced her to what's it called? Autoerotic asphyxiation,
Yeah.
whatever the yeah.
That's what it's called. Yeah.
But nope. She's gone and they're like, well, dang.
And
And
then
then
the
there's some
episode kind of just ends.
there's some banter between where is it here? Uno momento. There's some banter between him and his partner getting along again. And he's like, I don't get it. Like, what? Because Skanky has his feet up and Nick like trips him and like
Mm.
sits on his desk. And he's like, you got everything. Like you got that huge loft to yourself. You got you beautiful, young, you got your whole life ahead of you. Like, why? And it's like the captain or Nick or something like that. That's like, oh, it's simple, like cheap thrills, adrenaline junkie, you
Yeah.
know? And
Oh, and then right, and then it flashes back to 800 years ago when he's first turned into a vampire, and
that's it.
the
Yeah.
woman who was all like Nikolai.
Who he fucked. Yeah. Oh, we forgot in one of the flashbacks, she's like very clearly riding his dick. Right? Like there's a sexual implication there. And she's like, yes, give in to the darkness, become a murderer. Like, tell me how it's like good to be bad. Presumably vetting him to see if he would make a good vampire. And it's just like, hey, lady, I'll say whatever you want while my dick is in your mouth. And but he wakes up at some point in the night with his like medieval, like buttoned up, like men's blouse.
Basically posing like he's on the cover of a romance novel.
Yeah, with this sweet mullet.
With his
right?
mullet.
And she gets up and he's like, where art thou going?
And she's like, Nikolai, I have a surprise for you.
And then a dude comes in and he's like, oh, hey, whoa, I didn't sign up for. Hey, she didn't say she was married. And Spike from Buffy comes in and he's like, I think we will be good friends. And he like hovers over and his eyes glow and he has teeth. Implies that he's hovering. Yeah. And he's like, for a very long time.
And presumably, I assume this is how he got turned.
Yeah, that's what I assume too. And I guess that's the test to see if he would make a good vampire. You get your hot goth wife to go talk dirty to some mullet dude, fuck him all night, see if he'll admit to wanting to be a bad boy.
That's how you screen potential new vampires, is you engage in like a cuck situation.
And how they react. We're going to be dead. We're going to be undead for a long time. If you're not ready to watch your wife get fucked by other men, you're going to get bored. I mean, that's kind of what was being implied there, right? Oh, that's great. That's
That was
fucking
my
great.
that was my takeaway
Oh, I never even. Oh, that's
from
great. Um, and there's a small part where it zooms in on medical examiner's sweet 1992 top of the line um, Apple II computer, and there's a rose and like an exotic perfume on it, and I don't know what that implies. I think that implies he's leaving his girlfriend some perfume and a rose or something. I don't know the symbolism there, but the director's an artiste, damn it, as it slow zooms in on it. Uh-oh, how did I get out of full view? There we go. So on that note,
So, what something I want to point out
oh,
real quick is the it looks like medical examiner. Is that medical examiner chick or is that someone else on your background? There's a chick who's a vampire.
I think this is the brunette in his past.
Oh, okay. Maybe.
Because this is Spike. This is the guy that turned him.
Yeah.
That I assume those two people in the flashbacks were both vampires.
Oh, okay.
Maybe, right? And this guy turned both of them.
Mm.
So like they're like on and off vampire lovers, and this is their vampire father. Hey, I haven't watched the show yet. But speaking of watching the show again, or rather, I've only just started watching the show. Siege,
Yep.
you have just watched a random episode of Forever Night. So I must ask you, would you tune in next week?
You know, the plot of this episode's pretty bad. There's a lot of corniness going on here, as I mentioned.
Fair,
But
fair.
I really like the cast. I like the concept. I like the cast. I like the dynamic between them, and I like the characters. You know what? The negatives, and there were definitely as we talked about, missing scenes in this episode
Oh, absolutely.
that were made it watching it kind of jarring at times. All of that aside, there was enough here that I am actually intrigued enough to watch more of this. The fact that the fact that we're like back and forth, we're kind of like actually like trying to like unpack like who all these people are.
Right? Like, look
Is
at your background. Like
Yeah,
the chicken, this chick here
yeah,
is that brunette because the one in red
is the
is
medical
the
examiner.
medical examiner.
Yeah,
Intriguing.
and
But
we
yeah,
got
you're saying the fact that we're actually this invested in one single episode.
is a good sign, I think.
Oh, definitely. And I'm going to mirror that because like I actually think this would be fun to watch like with my partner or like a friend or something like that. Like this could have been the wrong levels of cheese and the wrong levels of 90s, right? But like the acting, it's selling me on it, and just the director, man, like he liked this. The director played Vampire the Masquerade. Like he was a LARP kid in the late 80s, early 90s. Come on. But I don't know, man. It was good.
I remember when I was a teenager, I actually like this was before I even went to university, but I started working on a screenplay, and the elevator pitch was what if Highlander but with vampires.
I'm sold.
And
What if Highlander but with vampires?
that's basically what this show is.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, in a way.
It the structure is different, but the pitch is the same.
Yeah.
Because in the structure, it's about navigating the world of immortals, and he's kind of independent. In this, it revolves around him trying to do good.
Yeah.
I wish it had explained her like otherworldly seductive powers.
Yeah, that's probably my biggest issue with the episode, honestly, is just
Because it did seem like she had like a I guess you hey man, I guess in 1992, that was like the pinnacle of hot. And
honest
hey, you're middle-aged, you know, you're divorced. It's either buy a new car, start doing weird stuff for the stripper.
Honestly, I think it would have been better if when she jumped up, she said that like line about like wanting to experience death. She jumped off the roof, hit the ground, thud, and then as soon as like Nick like goes back
The
down to the
camera
ground,
follows him looking
and then
over the edge,
and then she's gone.
and she's fucking gone.
Yeah,
That
that's how the episode
that's
should
my
have been.
head canon. That's
That
my head canon.
and
Or better yet, it zooms in on her in the morgue, right? With like the thing zipped up, but not zipped all the way. And then she goes
yeah,
and her
eyes
eyes
just
like
open.
open.
Which would explain why she, hit the ground and seemed otherwise just fine.
My head that's my head canon. Or that trope where as he runs over to look over the edge,
Just
she's gone.
gone. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Forever forever night. 2 thumbs up.
Well, that was episode 86 of the Lasercomb podcast. Best way to support the show is go to patreon.com/lasercomb, LAZORCOMB, where starting at the $5 tier, much like Daniel, you can pick a show for us to review a random episode of on this very podcast. You also get a bonus, mostly weekly, Patreon exclusive podcast, the Super Lasercomb Patreon Super Show. You get the occasional commentary track and a bunch of other goodies. So if you want to get in on that, go to patreon.com/lasercomb. If you want to interact with us, join the Discord. As always, link in the description. A little bit of an announcement. This show is going to be... I realize we've taken a couple of weeks off because I was working graveyards for a little bit there, but that's all done and over with for the next foreseeable future. So the shows will be we're back in business is what I'm saying, but the show is going to probably be moving to a bi-weekly format, so we can kind of alternate between this and our other podcast, which Too Much Energon, the Beast Wars podcast, which has been on hiatus for several months now.
That's right.
And it's it's time to jump in back in the stasis pod and fly toward that big planet buster in the sky.
Yeah, and then we'll still be week to week on Lasercomb, but 1 week will be this podcast, and the off weeks will be Too Much Energon to mix it up.
Yeah, keep things fresh and funky.
Yeah, that's right.
So we'll be back in 2 weeks with episode 87 of the Lasercomb podcast. Now, to figure out, it's going to be another Patreon pick. It's going to be our longtime Patreon subscriber, Jared. And one of the shows that he asked us to watch was a show I've never heard of called The Magicians.
Never heard of it. Yeah, apparently it came out in 2015.
Yeah, it ran from the mid to the late. It ran from 2015 to 2020. So it lasted how long? Lasted 5 seasons, 13 episodes apiece.
I'm intrigued.
So there's 65
It's
episodes.
hard following up Forever Night, man.
Yeah, I know, right? So there's 65 episodes, and to figure out which episode we're gonna watch, I'm gonna hit screen share, and we're gonna go to the old trusty random number generator. And screen share is loading. Screen is sharing. So, random number generator, 1 episode between 1 and 65, and here we go. 22.
Solid number.
22 was a very wild year in my life.
I don't even remember 22. Probably just worked. Lesser Evils.
So yeah, episode 22 is season 2, episode 9, Lesser Evils. That is way too much of a plot synopsis to read. So I'm not
yada
gonna...
yada yada. Oh, in a one-on-one duel to end a war, Fen gives him an enchanted sword. Oh, this is
someone surrenders himself to someone else and they leave together. Yeah, and a duel happens. Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Sounds great.
We'll be back in 2 weeks' time with that. And until then, I have been Siege Eternal, one of your hosts.
And I am Count Cuckula.
Bye bye.